Hi, biology students. This is Mrs. Baumgardner, and this is the first video in the biology series. So what we're doing here is we're recording all of the direct instruction lessons that you're going to have through the course of the year. If you're absent or you're on a field trip or whatever reason, if you're out, you can watch the video, see what you missed during class. Also, if you maybe had a day and you were a little distracted, you want to go back and study for the test, these videos are here to help you. So each video correlates to a page in your note packet. You'll notice this isn't like a fill in the blank. If you've got a sentence, fill in the missing word. The note packet just has diagrams and pictures, and it'll help you keep your notes organized. So the first chapter that we're going to do in biology is called Characteristics of Life, and this is lesson 1.01. And the actual title of this we'll get to in a second. But why do we talk about characteristics of life before we do anything else? Well, biology is the study of life. And so what does it mean for something to be alive? What I like to do is the first or second day of class, I'll ask the students, what does something have to be alive? So take a second and think about it and pause the video here as you do. Okay, so what'd you come up with? Some of the things that you thought of are probably right on the money. Did you say maybe has to use energy or eats? Did you say is made of cells? Those are both characteristics of life. Some of the characteristics of life that you thought of maybe aren't characteristics, like moving. There's living things that never move in their life. So we have 8, I believe, 8 or 9. What is it? I have to look and see. The back part of this chapter then is going to be microscopes, and we'll talk about the parts of a microscope and how you use a microscope, because that's something we're going to do in our very first chapter. So the first characteristic that you have to be considered alive, so number 1, living things are organized. Are organized. And that's our first characteristic of life. So think about your own body. You have the heart is always in a specific place, and it has layers and it has valves that go in. And think about how highly organized that is. What about a single cell organism? Does that mean it's not very organized? Well, to understand what it means to be have organization, living things, we're going to talk about levels of organization. Levels of organization. And so your table here is to start at the lowest level of organization. So down here, we're going to start at the lowest level, and we're going to go all the way down to the bottom. I'll have to move my camera when we get down towards the end, when we get to the highest level. So another thing I like to do is excuse me, I have got a frog in my throat. Let me get a sip of water. I like to change ink colors. So as we go, as we're working at different things, I'll be changing ink colors. If you like to color code, you can do that too. And if you don't care, you can just write it all in blue pen or pencil. So the smallest level that we have is an atom. And a lot of this should be this whole first chapter should be review from previous science classes. So that's the other reason I like to do this chapter, is it kind of gets you going back through things you talked about in other science classes. So an atom is the smallest piece of matter. Now, this definition, we're going to hone this a little bit in chemistry, because actually atoms can be broken down, but then they're no longer what we think of as an element. A matter of 118 possible elements. Possible elements. Well, what's an element? An element is one of 118 types of matter that are known to exist by scientists today. So for example, hydrogen is an element, carbon is an element, nitrogen is an element. And the smallest piece of that is a single atom. Well, you can break that atom down further, but it does not it no longer represents the element. So it's the smallest piece that still has the properties of the element. We're not going to worry about that in biology, but if you come study with me in chemistry, we'll make that definition a little more precise. If you combine, so 2 or more atoms chemically bonded, 2 or more atoms bonded together, forms, do you know the definition? Do you know what this is? Did you say a molecule? If you did, that would be correct. So, and these aren't just any molecule, these are very small molecules. So we're talking about things like H2O, 2 hydrogen bonded to 1 oxygen, or CO2, carbon dioxide, 2 oxygen and 1 carbon. These are molecules. They're made of hydrogens. Up here, the element would be hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon. If we take individual atoms of these elements and we combine 2 or more, it's going to make a molecule. The next level is a macromolecule. Macromolecule is, for our purposes in biology, is a large carbon-based molecule that's like 25 atoms or greater. So it's a molecule with more than around, and this is approximate, around with greater than 25 atoms. And it's going to be carbon-based. So when we get into macromolecules, water and carbon dioxide are very small, but macromolecules are going to be things like carbohydrates and proteins. And we're going to see that they're made of, sometimes we go up to thousands or tens of thousands of atoms. So if we've got somebody really small down here, we're just thinking a molecule. Up here, then we're going to go to macromolecule. All right, I'm going to change colors because this is where, actually, I probably should have written this in green. Let me kind of outline this in green. I think of green things like plants, like biology. Atoms and molecules are what you're going to study predominantly in chemistry. When we get into macromolecules, that's a chemistry, biology kind of overlap. Then we get into organelles. Organelles. So this is a structure made of multiple macromolecules with it that has a specific function. And you'll notice what's happening is we combine 2 or more atoms to get a molecule. We combine, you can think of multiple molecules to get a macromolecule. We combine these macromolecules to get an organelle. So can you think of any examples of organelles? I know you've had these in other classes. Did you say maybe a mitochondria? The mitochondria, and there's the meme that says the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Actually, it is. It produces the energy for the cell. We have things like the Golgi apparatus, the Golgi bodies. They package stuff and send it out of the cell. We have the nucleus. That's the control center of the cell. Those are all examples of organelles. Nucleus on here as well. All right, then we have the cell, the next level up. So cell is a combination of many organelles. Also, this is where life begins. You can't have an organelle that's alive. You can't have a macromolecule that's alive, but you can have a single cell that's alive. So life starts here. Life starts here. Well, this is where we're going to spend most of our year. We might jump up here to the end a little bit, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. But I'm going to switch colors again because we're going to switch areas of study. A combination of 2 or more special cells. Hash marks means copy, so it's a combination of 2 or more special cells. Is a tissue. So you have nervous tissue in your body, you have muscle tissue, you have something called connective tissue. And you'll notice I changed colors because really now this is where anatomy starts. So if you come and study anatomy and physiology with me, we're going to talk about tissues. A combination of 2 or more tissues is an organ. Combination of 2 or more organs is an organ system. So your digestive system, that's the mouth, the esophagus, the stomach, the small intestine, the large intestine, that is all part of your digestive organ system. And again, we said this is kind of where you're going to study anatomy, physiology, or just anatomy, short. If we put these all together, then if we put all of our combination of 2 or more organ systems, we have an organism. So a living thing. Now, sometimes the organism is down here. We still refer to a single-celled living thing as an organism. So sometimes an organism doesn't have all of these things. Well, let's go back into green because now we're talking about biology again. When we look at how organisms interact with their environment, we're back in biology, studying biology. So we could have a population, and this is a group of organisms, a group of similar organisms. And we define that, we're going to see in the next lesson, as a species in a given area. And that's a geographical area. So they're all within a certain area geographically. If you take multiple populations, all the populations in an area, we call it a community. So this is a combination in a given area. So I'm looking out my window and I see trees, I see birds, I see some bugs. Those are going to be a community. And then finally, we'd have an ecosystem. And that's all of the living things in a given area. So if we put everything together, I have an ecosystem that's a forest. So I look at my window, and so all of the it's a bigger area. So from the road all the way back to the back of the woods, that's going to be an ecosystem. You could have, if I had a pond outside my window, I would have a different ecosystem. And we think of ecosystems often in terms of habitats. Habitats are places where things live, like ponds, forests, deserts, so on and so forth. But what are our takeaways today? So to be alive, you have to show these levels of organization. And even if you're a single-celled organism, you're made up of macromolecules and organelles. Even the smallest bacteria has some rudimentary organelles. But we talk about them then in levels. So we start with atoms. It's the smallest piece of elements. We find those in the periodic table. If we combine those, we get molecules. Big molecules are known as macromolecules. Then we go to organelles, things like mitochondria and nucleus. They make up the cell. If we combine cells, we get tissues, tissues to organs, organs to organ systems. Organ systems make up the whole organism, although sometimes We don't have these things, but even if you're a single cell, you can jump down here, you can have a population, you can have a community, and we can look at the whole ecosystem. So for most of our time in biology, we're going to be, I'd say probably 75% of our time we're going to be here, and maybe then 20% of our time we're going to be here, and then the other 5% will be doing other things. All right, that wraps up the first video. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.